NASCAR could be headed to San Diego in 2026 for the NASCAR Cup Series, and there's been a lot of updates in regards to the 2311 and Farmer Motorsports versus NASCAR lawsuit. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight those really quickly. We're first going to take a look at a ton of paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple days. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into them. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Mason Massey's 2025 Special Olympics scheme that we'll see this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. This paint scheme looks really awesome in my opinion, and it's for a really great cause as well. The car looks really good. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack at Atlanta. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Mason Maggio's 2025 Control Alt scheme that we'll see this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Scheme's alright in my opinion. I do like the colors on this car, and it's nice to see a new sponsor coming in to the NASCAR Xfinity Series this season. It does look alright, and there's some good colors to it. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Michael McDowell's 2025 DePaul University scheme that we'll see next weekend at the Chicago Street Course. Spire's had some pretty good paint schemes so far this year. This one, in my opinion, is one of the better ones that I think they've had this year. I love the colors on it, and it's nice to see a new sponsor working with the team this year. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s 2025 Hungry Jack scheme that we'll see this weekend at Atlanta. I like this Hungry Jack scheme more than when it was with a JTG Doherty. This car actually looks really good. There's better utilization of the sponsorship placement. It does look good. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack at Atlanta. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Anthony Alfredo's 2025 Brand South Africa scheme that we'll see this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Honestly, car looks alright. It's nice to see that we've got a different sponsor working with Young's Motorsports this year. The colors on it are decent, interesting country to work with, but it's a decent looking car. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ross Chastain's 2025 Wendy scheme that we'll see this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. This one's very similar to the one that Ross Chastain had a couple weekends ago at Mexico City. I think this car actually looks really nice, and it's nice to see that Wendy's does continue to work with the Trackhouse Racing team and organization. I think this car looks really good. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Daniel Dye's 2025 B Pro Auto scheme that we'll see this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. I think the colors don't mismatch, or they're mismatched a little bit to me. I don't think they really match together perfectly. There's too much going on with this car. I'm not the biggest fan of this Daniel Dye car because it does not look as good. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Jesse Love's 2025 Roland scheme that we'll see this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. We're most likely going to see this car competing for the win. I think it does look pretty good, and you might be wanting to get used to this car because this car is going to be competing for the Xfinity Series win this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Daniel Suarez's updated 2025 Quaker State scheme that we'll see this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. I personally love this car. It looks really good. It looks a lot better than the one they had at Darlington. I love the colors of this one. It looks really solid. I think that Trackhouse nailed this one. It does look good. Looking forward to seeing the racetrack this weekend at Atlanta. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about All Pro Auto Reconditioning. As it was announced earlier today that All Pro Auto Reconditioning will be sponsoring William Byron for 2025 and beyond, as they have signed a contract with Hendrick Motorsports through 2030. They're going to sponsor William Byron for 2 races in 2025. The first race will be next weekend at the Chicago Street Course, and then they're going to sponsor for the Southern 500. It once again be 2 races in 2026. Then they'll upgrade to 4 races in 2027, and from 2028 to 2030 it will go up to 8 primaries. This is a really big deal for William Byron, and this pretty much confirms that William Byron is going to be sticking around with this organization through at least the 2030 season. It's nice to see a new sponsor coming in and working with this team and this program. I think there's a lot of potential for this program to be really strong long term for William Byron, and nonetheless really exciting and good to see that they're going to get a chance and opportunity to sponsor. I think it's really exciting and pretty good stuff overall, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about William Lamros. As it was announced yesterday that William Lamros will make his NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series debut this weekend in Lime Rock, as he'll drive the number 2 truck for the Raymond brothers this weekend at Lime Rock Park. William Lamros will also be sponsored by the Skip Barber Racing Co. He is a former graduate and instructor at there, but he's also competing in a lot of different things like the SCCA Trans Ams, and also has competed in other forms of racing over the last couple of years. This could be a decent opportunity, but I do worry about the truck he's in because the Raymond brothers are not one of the fastest and strongest teams. So I think that could hurt the team having a chance and opportunity to go out there and overall compete for the win. But I think there's a decent opportunity for William to show some good stuff. We'll see what happens, and we'll see if he performs. I think we'll have a decent opportunity. We'll see what William can do this weekend at Lime Rock Park. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the New Hampshire truck race as they have a new title sponsor for the event with the return for the first time since 2017 or 2018. As the title sponsor is going to be called the EGP 175. EJ Prescott Industries will be sponsoring this event. This is a new sponsor. I believe for the first time we'll have a title sponsor, and I don't think they've ever sponsored a car before in this competition, so it's nice to see a new sponsor coming in and working with the Craftsman Truck Series. They're kind of a local company, so that's something really exciting in my opinion, but I think it's pretty cool to see that we're going to have a new title sponsor for the event. I think it's nice to see EGP will sponsor the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race, not this weekend, but at the end of the year at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Colby Evans. As it was reported by multiple ARCA outlets, and he confirmed this as well, that Colby Evans, aka ARCA Start and Park Car on YouTube, he will make his ARCA debut in a couple weeks from now at Iowa Speedway as he'll drive the number 86 Club car for Club Racing. I've known Colby for quite a bit of time, and Colby's been someone who's been working in this industry for many years, and I know he's been working on trying to get his license in racing so he can compete in ARCA. Yes, it may not be the fastest car out there, but sometimes you have to start somewhere, and I think this is a really great opportunity for Colby, who I think wants to make it big in the sport. I think it's awesome to see someone who's been in the motorsports game for many years, who's been also growing their social media personality, and who's been growing their YouTube channel as well. I like seeing people like this have a chance and opportunity to succeed. I think he's going to do a really, really good job. Congratulations, Colby. If you're ever watching this video, I just want to say congratulations, man. You've earned it. You've earned my respect. Good to see you getting the chance and opportunity to make your ARCA debut in a couple weekends from now at Iowa. Really exciting and really fun stuff. Good to see him get the chance and opportunity. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Wesley Slimp. As it was announced yesterday that Wesley Slimp will also make his NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series debut this weekend. As it was announced, he'll drive a second Halmer Friesen Racing truck as he'll drive the number 62 for Halmer Friesen Racing this weekend at Lime Rock Park. If I'm not mistaken, Wesley Slimp does have a lot of racing in road courses throughout his racing career, and Wesley Slimp also, I believe, has had some success, and I believe he's also had prior experience racing at Lime Rock Park before from, I believe, the Trans Am Series. I think Wesley Slimp does have some talent from what I know, and I think getting an opportunity being a road course ace, he could be somewhat of a sleeper pick going into this weekend at Lime Rock. I think the Halmer Friesen trucks have shown some good speed. Obviously, we saw the driver of that 52 truck, Stuart Friesen, go to victory lane a couple weeks ago at Michigan. Those a little bit of things that helped. I think it's a great opportunity for Wesley, though. I think he's going to be fast. I think he's going to be strong, and I think he'll have a good chance and opportunity to run up front. I think he'll have the pace and speed. I think he'll definitely run very, very well this weekend at Lime Rock Park. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Alex Labbe. As it was announced earlier today that Alex Labbe will drive the number 22 truck for Raymond Brothers Racing this weekend at Lime Rock Park. Of course, he will not be driving a 07 truck car this week in Xfinity, as Nick Lights will be driving that car. This is not the best opportunity for Alex Labbe, as I think the Raymond Brothers as an organization and team, they have really, really struggled. However, I think this could actually be one of the best runs we see for the Raymond Brothers, because I've seen Alex Labbe get into lower level equipment, get into equipment that probably shouldn't be competing up front, and take that equipment and contend for wins overall. So I actually have confidence that Alex Labbe, despite the fact that he's going to be one of the slowest trucks in the field, I do have confidence that he's actually going to run very, very well. I expect that truck to show some okay speed for the standards of that. I would not be surprised if he gets a top 25, though the field is very stacked for this weekend. I think he's going to have a good opportunity here. I think he'll have a good chance to get a really strong, great run. We'll see how he does, but I think he'll have an okay run for sure this weekend at Lime Rock. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Larson. As was reported by multiple outlets over the course of the last couple days, that it has been confirmed that Kyle Larson has registered for the 2025 Knoxville Nationals and will be looking to compete, I believe, not only in the 360 class, but also in the 410 class in the Knoxville Nationals as well. Now, Kyle Larson has competed in the Knoxville Nationals multiple times before. I believe he won it back in 2021, and he also won it last year as well in 2024. before. And he's also won a lot of other dirt races throughout his racing career as well. He'll be looking to go back-to-back and win another Knoxville Nationals. When we talk about drivers who are very, very versatile in racing, Kyle Larson is one of the most versatile racers in the world. He's one of the best race car drivers in the world. Not the best, but one of the best. He puts on a good show regardless of what he gets behind. I know he's not been as strong in the NASCAR Cup Series in the last couple of weeks especially, but Larson is still very, very good. He's going to be a major factor to win the Knoxville Nationals this year. I think he's got a great chance to go back-to-back and get it done. I think he's going to have some really strong pace. I think he's going to have some really strong speed, and I do expect that he'll have a very good and a strong opportunity to run very well and be very, very competitive in the NASCAR, not NASCAR, but the Knoxville Nationals. I think he's going to do really strong and pretty good this weekend, or not this next weekend, but in the next couple weeks at the Knoxville Nationals. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Bubba Wallace. Now, Bubba Wallace, unfortunately, did not have the best run in the NASCAR Cup Series race at Pocono. He never got the chance and opportunity to qualify for the event because they unfortunately could not get the car fired and could not get the car started. But slowly throughout the early portion of the race, Bubba Wallace's car was starting to come in and was starting to move his way up to the front. Unfortunately, all three drivers from 2311 Racing had brake issues. Riley Herbst hit the outside wall with a brake issue in lap 42. Bubba Wallace around lap 60 of the race, he also had a braking issue, hit the outside wall, and then Tyler Reddick went to the garage for a couple laps, but actually got back out on the racetrack and was able to complete a few more laps in the event. But one person that actually praised Bubba Wallace is his owner, Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin praised Bubba Wallace's attitude. He says that Bubba Wallace has taken a complete 180 in regards to his attitude. He said a couple years ago, if Bubba Wallace had a really bad day, he would need almost a week to calm down and would need like therapy to get through the week. But he says Bubba Wallace's attitude has changed in a much positive way, and he's become a much better driver and a much better person because of that. I think you can definitely see it from Bubba Wallace. Yes, Bubba Wallace, you could tell, was not very happy about the brake issue, but he also noticed this as well. Bubba Wallace is someone who, in my opinion, wears his heart on his sleeve and wears a lot of emotions, but also someone who has been getting a lot better at this, and that's why I think Bubba Wallace this year has been way more competitive in 2025 than he's been in the last couple years, and he's been competitive in the prior years, don't get me wrong, but I've noticed an uptick in performance from Bubba Wallace this season. He's been, in my opinion, at times, he's been way quicker than his teammate Tyler Reddick, and I have been very impressed with the speed that car has shown at times this year. He's had race-winning speed in a few races this season, and I think that's because the attitude has gotten better, along with the great communication between Charles Denick and Bubba. There's been really great communication. That was another big thing that came in this year, is he got a great crew chief working with Bubba this season, so I do have a lot of faith and a lot of confidence that this is going to get better. I think Bubba's attitude has been improving, and I think it's been changing for a more positive. I think that's been a big positive, in my honest opinion, for Bubba's attitude getting a lot better. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Road America TV ratings for IndyCar for this past weekend. And honestly, they're not that good. As it was reported by Adam Stern earlier today, that Fox got 781,000 viewers at Road America for the IndyCar race on Fox. That is down from 863,000 viewers in 2024, but that was a little bit later in the year, according to reports, and also was on NBC as well. Despite the fact that the numbers are still down quite a bit from this event, I think you're down about 15 to 20%, you still have been up 33% from prior years and normal seasons. The reason for that is because they got a massive and huge rating for the race that took place at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but also the race at Gateway did have an increase in uptick in viewership as well when they did run at Gateway as well. So what's the issue here? Well, I would say they were trying to blame the war between, Iran, Israel, all that kind of stuff. They're trying to blame that because of the coverage for that. I can't really make that excuse. There, of course, was the NASCAR Cup race going on also, but you also had a 2.5-hour rain delay going on, and I actually went and tuned in the IndyCar race because there was a couple hours for the Cup race start. I went and tuned into that event. I think in a nutshell, you got to look at this. Road course racing in general, regardless of what type of series it is, it does not bring the best viewership in there, and the ratings generally are not as good for road courses compared to ovals. That's why IndyCar needs to add more ovals to the schedule. The problem is there's going to be less ovals going forward. They're not going back to Texas, and depending on what happens with the lawsuit going forward, on the NASCAR side, it's unknown if they're going to have a chance and opportunity to race at the ISC tracks. But I do think for Road America, I really hope in the future we do get to see more of an increase in ratings for IndyCar, because I think IndyCar racing was really, really good this weekend, but unfortunately, it could have been better, and I think there were some big reasons why it was not as good as it could have been, and we're a little bit down, which is unfortunate for IndyCar, because that's been a big problem. IndyCar is, despite the fact that they've had some good viewership at times, they've also been down in the viewership, and I think it definitely needs to improve, but it's not been improving as much as I think it could. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Mike Joy. Now, someone had asked a question to Mike Joy about potentially covering and being the lead broadcaster for the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race at Lion Rock Park. Well, Mike Joy actually responded to the person who asked him that question, and it sounds like there is a potential possibility that Mike Joy may, after all, be calling the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race, which is going to be on main Fox this Saturday afternoon at Lion Rock Park. There's a couple reasons why I am very excited about this, if this is true, that he is going to be calling the Truck Series race. Number one, Mike Joy has a lot of experience from being here at Lion Rock. He's raced here in TA2, or not TA2, but he's raced here in some of the other types of racing. He's done some of that stuff, like the autocross stuff, I'm pretty sure. But Mike Joy also knows a lot of the history of Lion Rock Park. This is no offense to Jamie Little, but if you're going to a new track where someone does have a lot of history that is part of your group, you need to bring someone in who has a lot of experience racing here and has a lot of experience at this track from the history of this sport. Jamie Little also have said this for a long time. She is an unbelievable pit reporter. She is one of the best pit reporters that NASCAR has currently at the moment. The problem is she is not a good lead commentator, and I don't think she should be the lead commentator for NASCAR in any way, shape, or form. She should be focused a lot on pit road, because that's where she thrives, and that's where she delivers very, very well. If they keep putting her in the booth, her legacy in the sport is going to get tarnished, and it is going to go away. And that's unfortunate because, like I said, I think that she is a fantastic pit reporter. But Mike Joy, let's be real and honest, is a much better lead commentator, even at his age of 75 years old. And we don't even know how much longer Mike Joy is going to be around in this sport, being a lead commentator for Fox. It sounds like he's going to be back next year, so 2026 could be his last year. So at this particular moment and point, you need someone to come in there who's going to be really good for trucks. I've talked about saying Eric Brennan needs to be there, Rick Allen needs to get into the truck booth going forward, but I don't think that Rick Allen wants to be paid cheap. They're going to want to probably pay him a lot of money. I don't think Fox is going to be capable of paying as much money as they're going to want to pay. So I think at this point, it'll be exciting if Mike Joy does get the call of the truck race, but it also means we're going to deal with Jamie Little potentially more, which is not the most exciting thing in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the Xfinity Series TV ratings from Pocono this past weekend. And honestly, they're very, very good. As it was reported by the CW earlier today, that the CW scored 1.12 million viewers for the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Pocono. That is up 21% from the race last year that took place during this weekend, which was New Hampshire Motor Speedway, and I believe that number was around 890,000 viewers, which of course was on USA. This is a major, major increase. The last two prior races had unfortunately gone below the 1 million number, barely for National, and I believe for the Xfinity race at Mexico, it was the lowest viewership we have seen so far this year in Xfinity. Now, obviously, the number peaked pretty highly. I think it was 1.545 million was the peak number for the race that took place at Pocono. And that's despite the fact that some people are still having trouble and still having issues being able to access the app and having issues of being able to tune into these races. I think Xfinity, though, their coverage has been good. I think a big reason why the ratings generally, for the most part this year, have been really, really good is because of the consistency. If you have a consistent network that is putting on races, you're going to have more people that are going to tune in on a consistent basis. That's one of the issues that the Cup Series has had for so long, and what issues other series like Xfinity had for quite a bit of time. The racing product in Xfinity also has been pretty good. I think it was the best race of the weekend. We saw a really fun event, a really fun winner, and a really cool story around that, which we're going to talk about here in just a short little bit. But I do think for Xfinity, their numbers have been drastically improving. They've been getting a lot better this year. They're having the best year when it comes to their ratings in many, many years and many, many seasons. They've had mostly every race over a million. A few of them have not been over a million this year, but international, I think they've been pretty good, and I think the ratings have been really solid and pretty good in the Xfinity Series. I think they've been pretty strong, and I think they've got to be a lot of praise happening for that because I think they've been pretty good, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Thomas Anunietta. As expected and reported, we talked about this on the channel earlier this week, but it was officially confirmed on Monday morning that Thomas Anunietta will make his NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series debut this weekend at Lime Rock Park. He will drive the 07 truck Forspire Motorsports. Now, many of you are going to look at this and say, oh God, this guy has driven for like the Cope Racing family team and has not done fantastic and really good. But Thomas Anunietta is a lot better, in my opinion, than the equipment that he has been in. He's going to be driving for Spire, and I know the 07 team has not been as strong this year as it probably could be, but I think the Spire Motorsports is still a great team. He's going to be in a team that we've seen drivers like Kyle Larson win with, Carson Hocevar win with this year, Roger Cruz picked up a win, Kyle Busch has gotten a win this year, and I think he's going to be with a really, really strong organization. Now, obviously, the 07 truck is probably one of the weaker Spire trucks that they have currently at the moment, probably the third best out of the full-time Spire camp over there, but I do think if there's anyone that can get behind a wheel and do a really good job on a road course, considering this guy does have some experience in racing in Trans Am and being very competitive in the Trans Am series as well. I think he's going to be really good. I think he's going to certainly be pretty fast this weekend for sure. I think he'll have a good chance and opportunity to maybe go out there and compete for the win. I think the truck is going to be good. The Spire team is also improving a little bit this year. Cory Lejoy, who we'll talk about here in just a short little bit, also drove for this team recently, will drive for many of the remaining races this year. I think it's going to be fun to see what Thomas can do. I think I'll have a good chance and opportunity to be pretty solid and pretty competitive this weekend at Lime Rock Park. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Cory Lejoy. As it was confirmed earlier today that Cory Lejoy will drive the 01 car for Rick Ware Racing this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Cory Lejoy has made around 4 or 5 starts in the NASCAR Cup Series this season and has also made a few starts in the Craftsman Truck Series this year as well, including in Michigan, and is going to run a majority of the remaining Truck Series races this year. Again, he's driven a 01 car and was really fast in the Daytona 500, was able to make it and qualify for the Daytona 500 and show some really impressive speed and some really strong pace in the NASCAR Cup Series race there. And in the other Super Speedway races, he has been pretty good. And Cory Lejoy, say what you want to say, you look at his stats at a track like Atlanta, he's been very good. He almost won this race in 2022 and was really fast in 2023 and the spring race of 2024 as well. Now, what are my expectations for Cory Lejoy this weekend? I do worry about the equipment, though, because while I think Cory is a good super speedway racer, and plus he's been focused on TV a lot more as of now, which he hasn't been fully focused on that, I think that it's still going to be a little bit more difficult for him to go out there and compete for the win. But I think he's got a great chance and strong opportunity to have a really good and really solid run, because I think that 01 car is going to show some pretty good pace and really good speed. I think he's going to have one of his better runs this season. I think Cory's someone who can get the best out of equipment for sure if he wants to put his mind to it. He almost won this race a couple years ago. I think he's going to be fast, and I certainly think he'll show some really good pace and some very solid speed in the NASCAR Cup race at Atlanta, joining a very stacked field for the weekend. Excited to see what he can do. I think he'll have a good car this weekend in the NASCAR Cup Series race at Atlanta Motor Speedway. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Aric Almirola. As it was confirmed on the intros earlier this week that Aric Almirola will be back behind the wheel of the number 19 car for Joe Gibbs Racing this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Aric Almirola has reigned around 4 or 5 starts in the NASCAR Xfinity Series this year, including a pretty controversial win at Phoenix Racer where he got into Alex Bowman and forced Alex Bowman up into the outside wall, overshot the corner and put Bowman in the outside wall, and took his only win in Xfinity, I believe his 7th or 8th career NASCAR Xfinity Series win as well, and his 5th win or 4th win with the team since joining Joe Gibbs Racing last season. Aric Almirola was really, really good in the spring. He had one of the fastest cars in the field. He started a little bit farther back in the field because the JGR cars were more set up for the handling side of things than they were for the overall speed. But as the race progressed and went on, especially on the restarts, we saw a ton of improvement for Aric Almirola. And I think that that car has shown some good speed this year. Ty Gibbs almost won with that car at Mexico City, had one of the fastest cars in the field. And like I mentioned with Aric Almirola, he's been very fast and very good in that car this season. He probably could have multiple wins. It was really fast at Las Vegas, finished second in that event. and I do expect that Almirola is going to have a car that is very much capable of competing for this overall win and victory as well. We'll see how he can do, and we'll see what he can do with the Joe Gibbs Racing team and organization. But like I said, I think Eric Almirola is going to be really, really good. I don't remember how many races Almirola does have for the remainder of the season. There's been rumors he could be involved in the silly season in some way, shape, or form for 2026. He might be pretty heavily involved with that going into next year, but I do expect that Almirola is going to be good. I think we'll have a good chance and opportunity to win. He's a really good super speed racer. I know Talladega did not go so smooth for Almirola, but I think I'll have a pretty solid chance and definitely a good opportunity here to run very fast and be pretty capable in the NASCAR Xfinity Series race this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Busch once again. Now, Kyle Busch stirred up a lot of stuff if you were paying attention this past weekend at Pocono. Remember, Dale Jr. was the crew chief for Connor Zilch in the NASCAR Xfinity Series because Marty Lindley had been suspended for a race because of a suspension rule. If you have 2 or 3, I think it's 3 or more lug nuts that are loose on the NASCAR Xfinity cars because they don't just use one single lug nut in Xfinity, they still have the 5 lug nuts around the car. If you have 3 or more lug nuts that are loose on the car, regardless of what tire it is, it could be one tire, it could be multiple tires, it doesn't matter. If you have a loose wheel, or have 3 loose lug nuts and don't have them tightened, a crew chief gets suspended for 1 race. And I believe you have 4 or more, you get disqualified from the event. Now, obviously, Dale Jr. was the crew chief and he went to victory lane with Connor Zilch. But Kyle Busch had made some comments about it, basically calling Dale Jr. a warm body, basically in a joking way. And then obviously, of course, kind of saying that there was a lot of people helping out at the Junior Motorsports shop. Now, Kyle Busch basically had to come in and defend some of the comments that he made, but also basically kind of said that they're taking a lot of things that he said out of context, which is really true. When you do look at what Kyle Busch said in that video that Front Church put out, they definitely took things a little bit out of context. Now, Kyle Busch also confirmed earlier tonight at the cookout race that he ran with the Legends cars, where, by the way, he went to victory lane, so that's the 3rd or 4th win. So people that are fans of DBC, that are Kyle Busch fans, are probably really happy right now because one more win, good things are going to happen for you. But Kyle Busch did confirm that Dale Jr. was a lot more involved in the process for the win, and he says he's happy that Connor Zilch and Dale Jr. were able to go to victory lane. Say what you want to say about what Dale Jr. has done in this sport on the racetrack. What he's done off the racetrack, everything he's accomplished in this sport has been absolutely phenomenal. I think Dale Jr. is one of the best people ever in motors in NASCAR history when it comes to every area. He's won as a crew chief now. He's won as an owner, won 111 or 112 races as an owner at this point in Xfinity competition. And he's got a team that's been so dominant this season. I mean, you look at Junior Motorsports in a nutshell this year. The Junior Motorsports team and organization, they have been the fastest and strongest team by far, without question, and there's been just so much speed from that team so far this year, and I think that's only going to continue to get better because, again, I think that we are going to be seeing more speed. I would not be surprised or shocked if the Final Four this year in the NASCAR Xfinity Series is all Junior Motorsports guys because they are way above and heads and shoulders above the competition. The only one I do worry a little bit about is Sammy Smith, but even Sammy Smith has had some really good speed so far this year. I do think that Austin might be the guy who gets in there and maybe beats him at the end of the day, but I think right now you look at the speed that the Junior Motorsports cars have. They're very fast, they're really strong, they're super, super quick, and I think it's only going to continue to get better as time progresses and goes on, and I think that we're going to see that, but I think Kyle Busch, at least kind of talking about the comments he made, I'm glad he kind of said what he said, and I think Kyle Busch is somewhat right with his comments, but he also is good to see that he's praising Dale Jr. for going out and winning as a crew chief, which I think is a really big milestone for Dale Jr. in NASCAR competition. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Connor Zilch. Now, we already talked about this a couple weeks ago, but we know this weekend that Connor Zilch is back in the NASCAR Cup Series as he'll drive the number 87 car for Trackhouse Racing this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. This is going to be the 3rd career start for Connor Zilch in the NASCAR Cup Series and also going to be the first time that Connor Zilch has competed at a super speedway. Remember the last time he ran a super speedway, he unfortunately had a really bad crash and missed the race at Texas Motor Speedway, which Kyle Larson got behind the wheel of that race car and went on to pick up the win and go to victory lane in the Xfinity Series event. Now, for Connor Zilch, this is going to be a really great opportunity, as Connor Zilch in the few Cup Series races that we've seen him run so far, I think he's been very, very impressive. Connor Zilch was really, really fast at COTA. He was charging his way up to the front, despite the fact he did get into an incident with Chase Elliott in the race. He did show some really impressive and some really, really good speed in the race, and I think he had a fast enough car to go out there, maybe get a top 5. But the Coke 600 was impressive. He did go 2 laps down in the race, but he didn't falter and didn't crack. He finished 23rd in the Coke 600, which a lot of drivers couldn't say they finished that high in the race, like Kyle Larson, for example, who crashed out during the double. I think that what we have seen this season from Connor Zilch, not just in the Xfinity Series side, but even the Truck Series side, not trucks, but really the Xfinity Series and even the Cup side for that matter at this point, has been really impressive, and I've been so impressed to see what we have seen from Connor Zilch so far this year. He's been having a really, really good season, and there's obviously going to be a lot of talks and conversations about whether or not we may see Connor Zilch in the NASCAR Cup Series this year. I think there's a very good opportunity that he may move up next season. He's been very, very fast. He has shown some really, really good speed, and I think if he can go out there and beat Daniel Suarez at a track where Daniel Suarez has been really, really good at, along with the fact he's already won so far this season twice, and he won on an oval nonetheless, which is huge for development. I think you got to look at this being a really big possibility that he may be in the NASCAR Cup Series in the near future. He's been so good this year. If he does move up in 2026, it's probably going to be 2027 at the latest, but I think there's a very good chance that Suarez is sweating at the moment. He needs to do very good, because if he doesn't do very good, those talks are going to continue going, and I think there's a good chance in the not so distant future that you are going to see him moving up. I don't think it'll be long before it happens, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the Pocono NASCAR Cup TV ratings from this past weekend. And honestly, they are very interesting. As it was reported by Adam Stern earlier today, that Prime scored 1.869 million viewers for the NASCAR Cup Series race at Pocono. Now, that race is down from the race that took place last year, which is 2.391 million viewers. But it is noted that that was at the green flag of the event at the scheduled distance. When they had the rain delay that took place throughout the race, the ratings, when they moved to USA as well, they dropped from about 2.3 down to 1.9 million. I think this race might have been on NBC, if I remember correctly, but I don't entirely remember for sure. Still being down is not the best, but it's also not shocking and surprising. And like I mentioned, there was a rain delay this time around. I think if this race had started on the scheduled distance, I actually think, because Pocono has been really good when it comes to getting a TV rating, regardless of what network it's on, I think that this could have been a huge draw. It wouldn't have surprised me if it did surpass and probably got like 2.1 or 2.2 million, considering we saw 2.1 million people tune into the Mexico race. And I think this race, especially with how popular Pocono can be when it comes to the TV market, I think this race could have been a little bit higher. But a very important thing is the fact that we had 43% of retention for the post-race show. And the viewership was younger. The average age of the fan was down 6 or 7 years compared to 2024, which had an average age of 62 for the Fox broadcast. When you look at the races that did take place on NBC this year, on Amazon this year, the average age was at 56, which is something that NASCAR needs to be looking toward the trends on, and that's what NASCAR is looking at. They completely understand and know that they are not expected to have massive increases in their TV ratings. They know that they're going to have a big drop in them, but they're looking at the long-term game, and it's very similar to what happened to the NFL, and I think that's something very similar that we saw in the NFL is going to happen here. I think as more people do buy Amazon and more people cut the cord on cable, with Amazon being so much cheaper than even things like YouTube TV and other things like Fubo TV as well, unless you get a free trial or kind of do become a new partner for it, I do generally believe that we look at this, and I think despite the fact, yes, the number is down a little bit, I still think the ratings at least show some pretty good positivity and at least show some pretty good signs as well. So while the number is not as high as I think a lot of fans are really, really looking at, we got to look at the bigger picture. We're looking at the long term. The short term, I think many of us did expect that we were going to see at least somewhat of a drop in the ratings department. I'm not surprised, shocked to see the drop this year. It's not that bad though, in my opinion, because again, it was expected that we were going to see at least some sort of a drop. It could definitely been a little bit worse, but I think the ratings are not that bad. And I think there's definitely some positivity when you take a look at the TV ratings, in my opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Philadelphia once again. as was reported by Adam Stern a couple days ago, that there have been a lot of talks surrounding Philadelphia potentially hosting a NASCAR race in the future. And the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, who came in recently, says that there's been conversations around Philadelphia potentially hosting a NASCAR race. But he clarifies there is no plans to affect Pocono if Philadelphia is to host a NASCAR race going forward. We've talked about Philadelphia quite a bit on this channel over the course of the last couple weeks because there's been a lot of rumors and speculation since the beginning of last week, especially since there's rumors of San Diego, which we're going to talk about here in just a short little bit, on hosting a NASCAR Cup Series race in 2026. Philadelphia's been mentioned as a possibility for hosting a race in the near future as well. Now, one thing that does need to be clarified, number one, the most important thing, is that Pocono is not going to be affected if Philadelphia does get a date, which is really important because while Philadelphia is kind of close to Pocono, it is still a couple hours away. So you do have a couple of those races that are going to take place a couple hours after that. So you definitely do have a little bit of time on that front where you can basically travel a couple hours away. Pennsylvania is a really, really big state, especially as well. So you got to look at that as well. But the other thing to look at is if Philadelphia comes on the schedule, a lot of people are thinking, oh, this is going to be another street course race on the circuit. Here we go. May not only have one street course race, but we might have 2 street course races on the schedule or 3 street course races on the schedule. That is actually not the case. In fact, they are not planning to, if they go to Philadelphia, they are not planning to have a street race. Instead, they are going to have a stadium race. It sounds like Franklin Field in Philadelphia is the current landmark location that they're looking at for 2026 or like 2027 for that matter. NASCAR saw the success of the race that took place at the Los Angeles Coliseum in the first 2 years that we did go there, and they absolutely do want to have another stadium race on the schedule, which would certainly be interesting. I think they saw success of the stadium concept, and one thing they're also looking at, because they're talking about going to Brazil as well in the future, they've talked about maybe hosting a stadium race in one of those stadiums in Brazil in the future. Just don't wear green if you're going to go down to Brazil. But in a nutshell, I think Philadelphia would certainly be very, very interesting if they could host a NASCAR date, because Pennsylvania is a really, really big state, and there's also been rumors and speculation as well that Pennsylvania could get a date for like Pittsburgh in a street course race, because NASCAR is talking about having some sort of rotation take place for the street course date in the future. But if Philadelphia is able to get a date in the not-so-distant future, they are not going to get a street race. Again, I don't want to see a ton of street races on the schedule. I definitely am down for a stadium race on the schedule, though. I think that would certainly be really fun and really, really interesting. And I think that could be a really fun event to watch if that does end up, in fact, happening. We're just going to have to wait and see on that front. But the fact that we continue hearing more and more reports about a potential race in Philadelphia now, and the governor is confirming they've had talks and conversations, tells you they're looking to have a race there. And I think that NASCAR obviously also says they're probably not going to be building a lot of new tracks in rural areas going forward, which I don't agree with that, but there's a lot of areas also you could go to where when it comes to racing that are not being used at the moment in a lot of different markets. I don't think Pennsylvania has a ton of built-in tracks currently at the moment that are available, and if there are, you can let me know in the comments. But I think Philadelphia would certainly be interesting. We'll see if in the not-so-distant future they do get a race out there. Again, the fact there continue to be conversations about it tells you there's certainly a good possibility on it. We'll see if there is a chance and possibility that we could see a race out of Philadelphia in the not-so-distant future. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Jordan Taylor. Now, I did a video covering a story on the channel a couple days ago, but it was announced on Monday evening and confirmed that Jordan Taylor will make his NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series debut this weekend at Lime Rock Park. He'll drive the number 7 truck Forspire Motorsports this weekend. Now, one of the big reasons why Jordan Taylor is going to be in that truck, and I forgot to mention this, is because he is with Wayne Taylor Racing. And Wayne Taylor Racing is part of TWG Global, which, remember, Spire Motorsports has a massive connection to that organization. As Dan Towers, who owns Spire Motorsports and is one of the co-owners of the team and organization. He also owns the TWG Global Group as well, and also owns the Wayne Taylor Racing Team in a partway fashion as well, with Andretti being heavily involved with that program, having an alliance with them as well. Jordan Taylor, if you want to know a little bit of history about him, he is a fantastic road course racer. This guy is legit. He is going to be getting into one of the best rides that we have in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series currently at this moment. The 7 truck this year has been very, very strong. It has won races so far this year with 3 different drivers. It's picked up a win with Kyle Busch this year, and has also won with Carson Hocevar. And while Kyle Larson didn't technically drive the 7 truck, he drove the 07 truck to victory lane. And also Rajah Karouf has been very, very good this year, especially in recent weeks, and was able to pick up a pretty impressive win, holding off Corey Heim and Lamros to pick up the win. But Jordan Taylor also does have a really, really big advantage going into this weekend, as he will be driving one of the best trucks, but also has had a ton of experience at Lime Rock. Yes, there's a lot of really strong competition from the road course side. You've got Cam Waters. You've got Brent Cruz, who's my pick to win this weekend currently at the moment. You've got Thomas Anunietta, who's going to be driving for Spire. Cam Waters is going to drive for Thorsport Racing. You've got Wesley Slimp coming in racing. You've got other big names who are really good at road courses. And you got to look at some of the guys that are really good at road courses that are full-time in a series. Corey Heim is going to be a major factor for the win. I think that Lane Riggs, who's been super, super good so far this year, I think he's going to be a major factor for the win. I think Chandler Smith could be a sleeper pick to go to victory lane. You've got a really stacked field that is running the Truck Series race. And I forgot to mention Josh Bilicki. He is driving for Nice Motorsports this weekend. But I think if there's anyone that can go up against someone like a Brent Cruz or someone like a Cam Waters, it is certainly Jordan Taylor. And like I mentioned before, you've got a guy who has a ton of experience racing at a track like Lime Rock Park and racing here in IMSA. And I think because of that, he has a really big advantage. Plus, he's going to be in a really fast truck. Now, Jordan Taylor does have some prior experience racing in NASCAR. He did, of course, run the NASCAR Cup Series race to Circuit Americas when Chase Elliott was injured back in 2023. Qualified very well, I believe qualified in 3rd or 4th position, but faded back as the day went on. I believe finished outside the top 20 by the end of the race. And also, I forgot to mention this, he made 2 starts in the NASCAR Xfinity Series as well for Kaulig Racing. He ran quite well at the race in 2023 at Portland and had a great chance and opportunity to go out there and win that event. And then in 2023, he also ran the race at the Charlotte Roval as well, and I think was fast in that race. But I think for Jordan Taylor, this is going to be with a really, really good team. Do I think he's one of the favorites? Absolutely, I do. I think the fact he's driving one of the fastest trucks in the field, that is going to give him a really strong and really, really good advantage. And I do expect that Jordan Taylor is going to have a really good chance and strong opportunity to pick up the win. I think his truck is going to be very, very, very strong. I think the fact that you have a lot of guys that don't have a lot of road course experience racing in this event, and Jordan has prior experience here, I think that's going to play a major role in him having a really good chance and strong opportunity to go out there and get it done. I think he's going to be fast. I think he's going to be super quick. I think he'll be very, very strong. And because there's not a lot of guys that are like Cup coming down and run this event with Atlanta going under in that weekend, I think that Jordan Taylor will be really good. And I think he'll have a great chance and a very good opportunity to pick up the win and go to victory lane this weekend at Lime Rock. I think he's going to be fast and really good this weekend at Lime Rock. I think we'll have a good chance to get it done this weekend. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the first of 2 major stories in today's episode as we're talking about San Diego once again. Now, last week it was reported by Jordan Bianchi from The Athletic that NASCAR and San Diego are becoming much closer to striking a deal to host a race in the San Diego area in 2026. Nothing has been officially finalized and announced at this point, but according to Jordan Bianchi, NASCAR and them are currently working on getting this deal done, and it sounds like an announcement will be coming sometime in the middle of July, so in the next 3 to 4 weeks, we should be getting an official announcement on this. And there was a news article that came out that Adam Stern had retweeted and reported as well, and there were some very interesting details that were brought up in this article as well. According to Adam Stern, NASCAR has been looking at possible sites in the San Diego area in multiple areas. They've looked at San Diego, Coronado, and San Diego County. Working with San Diego officials and people that are part of the Alderman group as well, they are working to host a date as well. Another interesting thing noted in the article as well, there have been discussions about potentially hosting a 39th race on the NASCAR Cup calendar and a 40th race on the NASCAR Cup Series calendar as well. And one other thing that was mentioned is some of the cities that NASCAR's had talks and discussions about maybe hosting a street race or stadium race. Montreal, Philadelphia and Denver are among the cities I've had conversations with. I've also heard in recent months that they've had conversations with a couple other cities. I've heard rumors of Pittsburgh, and I've also heard Cincinnati is another city they've looked at as well. It was also mentioned in the article as well that they had some big talks and deep discussions about maybe racing in Long Beach in 2026 or 2025, about a year or so ago, but that deal fell through really quickly. A big reason for that is because Jerry Forsythe sold off the rights to Roger Penske in IndyCar. There's been some talk, maybe there could be some talks between IndyCar and NASCAR in the future, maybe doing some sort of event with Long Beach, but NASCAR is going to want to be the main headline, and they're not going to want to lose being the main headline for an event like this. The big thing is San Diego. NASCAR has been in talks, and there's a couple reasons why they do want to race in San Diego. Number one, San Diego is a big market. That big thing is the weather. You look at like Chicago, for example. They have seen the success of the Chicago Street Course, and they're like, hey, we can jump in and we can get involved with this event as well. And we've seen Chicago have success. Yes, I know rain has affected the first 2 years of the event, but when you look at the weather for San Diego, most of the time, well, NASCAR might bring some rain, but I would not expect if NASCAR goes there, there's going to be rain. San Diego, from what a lot of people say, is a city that doesn't have a lot of weather issues, and there probably won't be any major problems when it comes to the weather going into this event. So you can probably be thankful for that. It also checks another big box. It's part of that major market that NASCAR is looking for. NASCAR is trying to get into the Southern California market once again. They want to be back there because NASCAR, for the first time in many years, was not in the Southern California market. They did not race on the Los Angeles Coliseum, as that date went to Bowman Gray Stadium for 2025, and it sounds like the Clash is going to be staying at Bowman Gray Stadium at least for the foreseeable future, as they look to have a 5-year deal at Bowman Gray Stadium. I think they absolutely look at some other things as well when it comes to this. They look at the success of that, but there's also a lot of talk and speculation that the Chicago Street Course will likely not come back in 2026. Instead, it is rumored that Chicagoland more than likely will have a NASCAR Cup Series date next year once again, which if they do get a date, will be the first time in 7 years they have hosted an event. There are a lot of people that have been saying from the Chicago area that they don't expect it to be back next year, though there's some saying it could come back. But if Chicago does go away, Chicago more than likely will make a comeback. Now, if the San Diego race ends up happening, according to this article as well, it would be early in the season. It'd probably be during like the Fox portion of the year, and it wouldn't happen like in the middle of the year like Dale Jr. has talked about. So it sounds like if Mexico City does return, which there's a good chance of possibly that it does end up happening, you can basically talk about that being where they've maybe put it, but there's probably going to be early in the year. Mexico, if it does return, might come back, even though there is talk about Canada and maybe them hosting a race in the future as well. Moving on to discussion of 39th and 40th races on the calendar. This does include the All-Star race and the Clash as well. So currently, if you count the All-Star race and the Clash, they currently have 38 races instead of like the 40. So they could be looking to maybe add a few races in the future. NASCAR has been floating this idea around. I've been talking about maybe expanding the schedule to around 38 to maybe 40 races in the future. I don't want to see the NASCAR schedule expanded way too much. As I love racing and covering the sport, I think that you've already got a lot of people in the industry that are burned out currently at the moment, and if you continue adding more races to the schedule and more stuff that they don't want to do, they're going to get more upset, and you're going to have less people that are going to want to stick around because they're going to have to show up. So you're either going to have double headers if you want to do this, which I think there's a couple tracks you usually could do double headers for if you want to, or you may just add a couple extra dates, and it will be a lot more travel for everybody involved as well. So again, it would go from like a 36 to 38 race point schedule, and they also mentioned possibly that it sounds like the playoff format is going to be streamlined a little bit. It sounds like they may be cutting the amount of guys in the playoffs. I've heard rumors that they could cut the playoffs. They've had discussions about this, maybe cutting it down from 16 to 12. I've said this for a while. If we're going to do some sort of playoff format, they need to cut it down from 16 to 12 drivers. I think there's way too many drivers currently at the moment that are making the playoffs at this time, and the less people have making the playoffs, the better it's going to be. But getting to the final side of things, Montreal, Philadelphia, Denver. Philadelphia probably not going to host a street race. So you got to look at Montreal and Denver. Denver is not a market that's been tapped by NASCAR in quite some time. The last time they raced in that market was when they raced at Pikes Peak International Raceway, which I believe they raced there from around 1997 or 1998 up until the 2005 season. David Green was the last driver to win at that track, and they stopped going there at the end of 2005. I believe that track is still around and existing at this time. They just grew out of it. But I think Denver is a market that NASCAR definitely needs to tap. I think that's interesting. But the big one is Montreal. Look, there is a lot of talk right now that NASCAR is looking to go above the border and race up in Canada next year. And you look at the original schedule they have for this year. They had everything going from Michigan to Mexico to Pocono. I think the original plan was to go to Michigan, then go to Montreal, then go to Pocono. And that's what the schedule would have been like, and it wouldn't have been as much of a logistical hassle if that was the way they did it. But it sounds like Mexico also wants to be on the schedule. So that's going to be the interesting thing, is what's going to happen with the remainder of the schedule getting revealed, because I do think there is going to be some pretty interesting news coming out on that really, really soon. I think there's a chance a lot could happen. What's also going to happen with the lower series for Xfinity and trucks? Are we going to see Rockingham back on the schedule next year? We know Rockingham is being sold currently at the moment to a new bidder at this particular point. So I do think that's something to definitely watch out for as well. I'm going to be very interested to see what happens with the remainder of the situation there and what happens with San Diego. I think NASCAR racing in the Southern California market makes a ton of sense. I hope it does happen. I hope we get to see some racing in Southern California. I don't want to see a ton of street course races. I think we should rotate the race. If it happens, it'll probably be a multi-year deal. San Diego comes on the schedule. I think it's going to happen. I think San Diego will be on the schedule next year. I think it's probably going to happen. And now we're going to head on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're talking about updates on the 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports versus NASCAR lawsuit. As over the course of the last couple days, there has been a ton of updates in regards to the 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports lawsuit. And by the time many of you are watching this video, there could be a lot more updates coming out as we begin to put our way into the lawsuit. Remember, the original court date in trial is set for December 1st. We are about 5 months away from the trial date being set currently at the moment. As this trial does progress and go on, as more information does come out, unless the settlement comes into play, there is going to continue being a ton of information that we're going to be hearing from a lot of parties. But it all started on Monday, as it was reported by Bob Parker, said Judge Kenneth Bell has denied 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports' motion to dismiss NASCAR's counterclaim. So what exactly is the counterclaim? Well, both 2311 and Front Row, basically, according to what NASCAR said, they were coercing behind the scenes, and they were negotiating and playing negotiating tactics behind NASCAR's back, and they were talking about having a boycott as well. Which, to me, I don't really understand how negotiating with NASCAR, negotiating with other parties about certain things really makes a lot of sense in my mind. I get negotiating is something that can be used against you, but I don't think negotiating should be a really big way. But I think the judge denying it is certainly interesting, and we'll talk a little bit about what some of Judge Kenneth Bell's comments that he brought up during the lawsuit as well. Now, Jeffrey Kessler also responded to this by basically saying that we still do have a really good case in regards to the whole entire lawsuit, but we're also very disappointed in the decision that was made. They didn't read the whole entire document that they had put out. It's kind of very similar to the original document that they had when Jeffrey Kessler responded last week to NASCAR's decision, a couple weeks, to go ahead and revise that stuff. We also do have to, of course, talk about the fact that 2011 Front Row, we're still waiting on an official decision on whether or not they are going to go ahead and appeal. And have instead of just the 3 original judges that were part of that core hearing that took place, we're waiting on if a couple other judges may get involved, all 15 judges that are part of the panel for the 4th Circuit of Appeals. And all of them, they want to go ahead and hear the case altogether. I think that is something that we're paying attention as well, because that's important for the charters in that as well. But today, there was a really big side of this lawsuit that also came out as well, and it's the fact that the teams that did sign the charter agreement outside of Colorado Racing, 12 NASCAR Cup Series teams that signed the charter agreement. Teams like, of course, like the Haas Factory team, Hayek Motorsports, Hendrick Motorsports, Joe Gibbs Racing, Team Penske, other teams like Richard Childress Racing, Trackhouse Racing, RFK Racing. Every single team except Colorado Racing basically went to court earlier today. They had a representation by Adam Ross, who is representing the teams that did not want to sign the charter, that signed the charter agreement, and do not want to overturn the confidential information. Now, apparently there was a hearing with all these people in the non-suing teams, and apparently Adam Ross, the guy who was on the team site, said that Kyle Larson may be the best driver in the world. So for people that are against Adam Ross on that front, the same, which by the way, Kyle Larson never said he was the best driver in the world, but he brought that up as well. But Adam Ross also said something that I feel is very important. He says that if the teams have to share all the information the NASCAR is really running, all their financial information that can help them in the case, and release that information to the public, it could be really concerning and very catastrophic and devastating in regards to a lot of things. which I completely understand. According to what NASCAR has said, they want 11 years of history from when the charter agreement started back in 2016 all the way to 2026, which will be the 11th year of the charter agreement. NASCAR wants all the information on that so they can use it in the lawsuit. Now, the reason that the teams do not want NASCAR going through everything that they don't want them going through from the document they have received, they don't want them going through the whole thing altogether because it could potentially release a lot of information in regards to contracts, driver salaries, and contracts. And NASCAR can use that against the teams that don't want to sue, which, by the way, it has been confirmed, despite what I thought was possibly. It's been confirmed that no team is planning to sue, which is why Adam Ross is coming in the first place to really help the teams that don't want to sue altogether. But they want all the information from the 11 years that took place. And then, apparently, continuing on with this as well, which we'll get back to the other side in just a second, apparently NASCAR is subpoenaing Doug Boles, and the judge is basically asking Doug Boles to come in and testify either against 2311 in front row or against NASCAR, because Doug Boles, of course, is the president of IndyCar currently at the moment, and they're trying to figure out all the financial information on that front as well, which I find to be very, very interesting with that as well. Doug Boles basically will have a 650-page document that is going to basically take place. He is going to show all that information, and Judge Kenneth Bell is going to make a decision on that. Judge Kenneth Bell has also stated as well that he has felt like multiple times that he feels like that both parties need to come together between 2311 and front row and also NASCAR as well. He says there needs to be mediation that needs to take place because otherwise this is going to get a lot uglier than it needs to be, and it feels like that if both parties could come together and settle this, there wouldn't be as many problems. It sounds like the Kenneth Bell, he's not on anyone's side anymore. He's not on NASCAR's side in this situation because he thinks that NASCAR definitely has some things they're hiding with currently at the moment, but I don't think he's also on a team side anymore either. I think he's on both sides currently at the moment right now. And I think as this lawsuit continues on and this, antitrust suit continues on and more information does come out, I think things are only going to get uglier at this point before they do end up getting better, which for some fans, I think a lot of them are going to want to see what happens with the lawsuit altogether. But you have a lot of people that are wanting this lawsuit to come to an end, but we're starting to get into that discovery phase, and a lot of that discovery information is going to come out. Again, the trial date is going to be December 1st. But the other side of the thing we need to kind of look at as well right now is what is going to exactly happen with if they get all the information NASCAR wants. Again, it could be very catastrophic. The teams don't want to release all the information that they have as confidential stuff. It could release contracts. It could release sponsors and how much money is being used for the teams, among other things, and that sponsor money could go to somebody else. It could also reveal driver salaries as well and how much teams are making from these organizations that are involved in the sport currently at the moment. And they don't want that to happen. They do not want to reveal all that information, which I find to be very understandable. I think something like this should not, again, stuff like this should not be public information. I think there's some stuff that you just don't want. I think a lot of us fans would also love to see what the driver contracts are, not as much about how much money they're making exactly. I think that kind of stuff does not need to be brought to the public on a personal front, but I do think that there should be some information like maybe like a lot of us want to see some of the driver contracts that are revealed, and I think that would be something interesting is to find out what the driver contracts are, because when it comes to the driver contracts on when like silly season ends or the free agency side of things end, I think that is certainly interesting. But you've got a lot of teams right now that are not very happy right now with NASCAR, and I think that as more time goes on, you're going to have a lot more people, and I think you're going to have some teams that are going to be really, really upset with 2011 in front row for dragging them in this lawsuit, and I think there's going to be some people on that side that are going to try to convince 2011 front row to settle with NASCAR so they can move on and focus on other things at this time. But I do think that 2011 in front row are going to continue doing whatever they can to try to continue being involved in this lawsuit and not stopping with the lawsuit on a long time future. As more information does come out in the coming days, we'll see live on the channel with the lawsuit, but I think a lot of stuff is going to be coming out, and I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with the remainder of this lawsuit going forward into the future. So, that is going to be today's Law NASCAR News and Motorsports News video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. Turn notifications on so if I win a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. List description below that, and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. Your thoughts about some updates on the 2011 and Former Motorsports lawsuit. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And more thoughts about all the other stories to talk about today on the channel, including Jordan Taylor running the Truck Series race, and the other stuff around San Diego potentially hosting a Cup Series day. We've got a lot of content coming out soon on people like Haley Hailie Deegan, Shane Van Gisbergen, Cards, Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch, Bubba Wallace, Ross Chastain, Cleese McFarland, Dodge, Ram, Frankie Muniz, Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Sam Mayer, Sheldon Creed, I already mentioned Frankie, Eric Almirola. Silly season a little bit. I'm going to have a silly season update, silly season predictions video dropping Sunday, most likely. NASCAR news video dropping on Monday, and then some other content dropping, and some great stuff dropping really soon. A lot of other things you'll be seeing very soon on this channel. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content, other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.